Hello students, welcome back to the English class. Today I will continue the explanation of the poem Childhood by Markus Natten. I have already explained the first two stanzas of the poem. In the first stanza, the poet talks of rational outlook. He wants to know when he lost his childhood. He makes a guess whether he lost his childhood at the point of his life when he gained rational outlook about life. When he realized, when he understood that there is no such thing as heaven and hell, when he understood that they are all imaginary concepts. The poet asked himself whether it was the time when he lost his childhood. Okay. In the second stanza, the poet talks of hypocrisy of the adults. He asks himself a question whether he lost his childhood when he realized that adults were not as good as they seemed to be, when he saw through their hypocrisy. They talked of love and preached of love, but they did not act so lovingly. They did not love each other. So the poet wants to know whether it was the time when he lost his childhood. Now, in the third stanza, the poet again asks a question and he wonders at what point of time he lost his innocence. When did my childhood go? The poet goes on repeating the same question. He wants to know when he lost his childhood. Was it when I found my mind was really mine to use whichever way I choose? The poet again makes a guess. He asks a question to himself whether it was the time when he found that his mind was really his. His mind really belonged to him to use whichever way I choose. And he was free to use his mind the way he liked. To use whichever way I choose means my mind was really mine, his mind was really his, and he was free to use his mind the way he chose, the way he liked, and producing thoughts that were not those of other people. What it means? It means that he was free to produce thoughts which was not influenced by others. It means that earlier, during his childhood days, his thoughts, the poet's thoughts, were influenced, or the poet's thoughts were controlled by his parents, by the elders of the society. He was not free, or he was not able to think independently. But now a time arrived in his life when he was able to use his mind the way he liked, when he was free to think independently. He was independent of others. He was no more controlled. His thoughts, his ideas, his opinions were no more controlled by others. Okay, but producing thoughts that were not those of other people but my own and mine alone. The poet wants to emphasize on this fact that the thoughts that his mind produced, the thoughts that he thought were really his they did not belong to others. They did not belong to the parent, to the elders of the society. They belonged to his own mind, to his own, they were the products of his own free thinking. Was that the day? The poet wants to know whether it was the day uh, when he lost his childhood, when he lost his uh, innocence. So, in this stanza, the poet says that at one stage of life, he gained a sense of individuality. In this stanza, the poet talks of his individuality. At one stage of life, the poet gained a sense of individuality. What it means? It means that he understood that he was separate. He had a separate personality. He was a different individual. He had a distinct personality from others. He was different from others. His mind was different, his personality was different, his ideas were different. He was completely different from others. Okay, because on what basis he can say that he was different from others? On the basis that his mind was unique. His mind was free to form opinions. His mind was free to think independently. And his ideas, his thoughts were no more influenced by others in the society. So at this stage of life, the poet became conscious of his separate identity and his separate personality from others, his separate mind. His mind was different from others and he had a different personality from others. So the poet wants to know, was that the day? It means the poet wants to know whether it was the day when he lost his childhood. Okay, so there are three stages of life when the poet thinks that he could have lost his innocence, his childhood. Okay, now let us read the fourth stanza. Where did my childhood go? In the fourth stanza, that is the last one, the poet changes his question. Here he wants to know the place where his childhood has gone. In the first three stanzas, he wanted to know the time when he lost his childhood. In the last stanza, he wants to know the place where his childhood has gone. It went to some forgotten place. The poet himself answers the question. He tells us that perhaps his childhood has gone to some forgotten place. Forgotten place means a place that has been completely forgotten, that has gone very far away from him. It has completely disappeared. Okay. It went to some forgotten place that's hidden in an infant's memory. But the poet knows where his childhood is hidden. He says that his childhood is hidden in the face of an infant. Infant means very small child. So when the poet looks at small children, he can see that his childhood is somewhere hidden in their faces. He sees his own childhood in the innocent faces of small children. Although the poet's childhood has become a distant memory for him, but it is a reality for other children. What it means, here the poet wants to say that childhood is a cyclic process. Okay, it leaves one person and goes to another person. Childhood left the poet, and he can see that it has gone to another child, and then it again leaves that person, again goes to another person. Okay, so childhood is something that is once gone, never comes back. It goes to some other person. And okay, so my dear students, in this poem, some poetic devices have been used. Okay. You can notice that there are two sentences like, when did my childhood go? And was that the day? These two sentences have been repeated. Okay, so when a phrase or a sentence is repeated in a poem, it's called refrain. Refrain. Okay, so the poetic device used in this poem is refrain. There is one more device that has been used. This is repetition. You can notice in the second stanza in the line, they talked of love and preached of love. Here the word love has been repeated in the same line. So this is called repetition. Okay. So there are two poetic devices used in the poem, refrain and repetition. Okay. So my dear students, I hope you have understood the poem well. Now what I will do is, I will send you a written explanation of the poem. Just go through it and try to understand. And then again, I am going to send you the questions and their answers from the poem. Till then, thank you and goodbye.